One of the most common questions I've been asked is how to differentiate what is mine as an aspect of my psyche and what may be an entity or occult interference. In other words, what do we need to integrate as part of our shadow or split off parts of ourselves due to trauma and childhood wounding, like a soul retrieval, and what do we need to reject as not parts of ourselves? I'll share 4 key points about it. First of all, it is very important to understand and acknowledge that it takes a higher level of being and soul embodiment, self-awareness, connected to your true self and essence, with a still mind, an objective inner witness, and grounded psychic sensitivity. And most importantly, an in-depth understanding of your own psyche and mind to discern what is what. In other words, know thyself. The vast majority of entity interferences are very subtle, nuanced, and often hardly distinguishable from your own childhood trauma, triggers, shadow projections, and fragmented sub-personalities. Key point number 1. As long as you're not in self with a capital S, you won't be able to tell the difference. Achieving this already takes ongoing inner psycho-spiritual work. You won't be able to perceive these forces accurately from the surface level of ego personality perception. I've seen many people overestimate their level of being and awareness, rushing into all kinds of assumptions about having entities or seeing entities in others without being grounded in self, and become very fixated on this topic without doing the groundwork on a psychological and embodiment level. The more connected you are to your true self and essence, the more naturally clearer your discernment will become in the process of sincere psycho-spiritual work and soul embodiment. Key point number 2. Unless you are absolutely 100% certain that you may be dealing with an entity or external occult force, treat it as if it is a wounded part of yourself. One of the worst things you can do is reject a part of yourself you mistook as an entity. These wounded and defensive sub-personalities can also be very hostile and angry, especially if there's a history of suppressed anger and childhood trauma. Beneath anger is usually unconscious pain, shame, grief, and guilt, which must also be processed. If you mistake a very wounded or exiled or shadow part of yourself for an entity and attempt to reject it, or even worse, forcefully exorcise it, it will create more severe psychological issues and soul fragmentation that will be harder to retrieve. People offering all kinds of questionable entity removal modalities can do much damage that way. Key point number 3. Non-physical entities and non-terrestrial beings need an entry point within you to be able to come in. I've addressed that before, but just to summarize, they can be unconscious blind spots, trauma, childhood wounding, unintegrated shadow aspects, giving into the temptations of the lower nature, lust, greed, power over others, dissociation, disembodiment, pride, arrogance, hate, rage, vanity, self-importance, but also self-pity, victimizing yourself, blaming others, drugs, alcohol, and so forth, all serve as entry points for another force to come in through the cracks of your unintegrated being. Remember, when you're not embodied and embodied, something else can come in. They can also attach to wounded parts of yourself. Removing an entity is not enough, for it will come back tenfold if the original entry point has not been healed and integrated. Hence, these occult forces also serve a teaching function, showing you where you have work to do. Key point number 4. The psycho-spiritual inner work is imperative in all cases, dealing with occult forces and entities or not. Ultimately, consistently engaging in sincere inner work and the process of embodiment to bring forth your true self is the best clearing and protection strategy. The more you live from self as the ground of your being, the less these forces can affect you. Anything else is just symptom management and is temporary. The more you integrate your shadow and exiled sub-personality parts of yourself, the less any entity can get a hold of you or interfere with you. The less you're also influenced by any malevolent suggestions from the outside, as you start to live from and are guided from within your soul being. As a result, you will also have more access to creative life force and energy and more free will as you become more aligned with divine will, divine guidance of a higher nature, and divine forces.